Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered CPA podcast. I am your host, Dawn Scott. Today, I have a really exciting guest with me. Her energy is absolutely electric, and she lives the life that we all should aspire to live. Her background is magical, and the way she lives her life is how we should all aspire to be. So, everybody, welcome Monica Rivera.
Dawn, thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely. So why don't you start out by telling everybody a little bit about kind of your corporate background, how you got to where, the first part of your story starts.
Oh, absolutely. So I am like most people, was born and raised to think about that steady paycheck and just, finding something that was stable. I am first generation to this country. My parents were born, my dad was born in Puerto Rico, my mom was born in Cuba. And it was that very first gen story, which is just get a stable check. If you could be a lawyer or a doctor, even better. And that was really kind of that drumline that I heard throughout my life growing up. And I decided, I'm going to follow that. And I wasn't a doctor or lawyer, but I did follow a background in business, and particularly in marketing. And so I spent probably almost 20 years working in marketing in corporate America and big Fortune 500 companies, really climbing that corporate ladder that I thought was what I was supposed to be doing. And then finding like with every rung that I climbed, I wasn't feeling much happier or very connected to the things that really lit me up inside.
So was there a day, because obviously that leads us to knowing that something changed. So was there a day where your change occurred, or was your change and realization over a stretch of time?
It was really over a stretch of time. And so in particular, so I worked at this company, which is, a big tech company in a marketing role. And the company itself, really great benefits and, great culture, but I think it's always dependent on the group that you work for. And so unfortunately, I started working in global marketing ops, which was great. And then there was a reorg. And that reorg shifted me maybe 10 degrees to the left. And I thought, okay, 10 degrees isn't too bad. I can still sort of get back. And then there was another reorg, and that shifted me another 10 degrees. And you kind of hear what I'm saying. So it starts to move you away from what my original plan was of what I wanted to achieve and accomplish in my own professional goals. And a lot of times that happens. And unfortunately, it's a big company mentality and you're a head count. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that from the company perspective. Everyone's trying to make sense to their shareholders. Everyone's trying to make sure the stock price goes up, all of those good things. But as an individual, it feels like there's a change that needs to happen. And so what I found also in particular is that those opportunities that I kept reaching for, Dawn, weren't happening as easily as they had in other organizations. And I thought, that's interesting because I was pretty good at kind of nailing this promotion thing and being able to pivot and zig and zag and really try to do other things within the companies that I had been a part of. And I realized I'm going to start looking for other roles. Maybe it's just, this company. And so I was interviewing one day, and the woman has this beautiful corner office, and right behind her is a view of New York City. And she's talking to me very passionately about speakerphones because that's what the company did. They helped
Speakerphones?
market, yes, speakerphones, right? And she's talking to me, oh, I haven't taken a vacation in so long, and I'm hoping to get a week away. And I'm hearing her talk about this. And all I can think on is right over her shoulder, the city looks so great. It's such a beautiful day. I want to be outside. And I realized that it didn't have anything to do with my specific company or this woman and speaking passionately about speakerphones. It was time for me to do something different. So that's really kind of an accumulation of events to realize I needed to make a different change for myself.
So then that's obviously a really scary, enlightening. There's a lot of feelings that go into when you finally make that decision. How did you figure out what moved you or what made you happy or what you were going to do next? Was it a long night? Was it like how did that look? What'd that look like?
Yeah, so it had been a accumulation of time. So I've always been someone who's had lots of different interests, which can be a really good thing or a really negative thing, depending on how you frame it, right?
Yep.
Because they say, jack of all trades, master of none. And so I really love that idea. So in my career, I've been more of a specialist, but in life, I kind of consider myself more as a generalist. So I have lots of different passions. I love to take on different hobbies. And when I find something I enjoy, I really go all in learning it. And then I say, okay, I feel like I've gotten like a good amount of experience here. What else can I do? And so when I was kind of thinking about what are those next steps going to be for myself, I started with podcasting. And so I didn't leave my corporate job. I said, you know what? If I feel like I'm not getting something from the place where I am, what can I do for myself in this moment? How can I start to light myself back up, if you will, and also prove that I still have those capabilities? Because one of those things, and I'm sure other people can relate to this, is when you feel like things aren't going well, sometimes you have that thought like, maybe it's me. Maybe it's not going well because of me and I'm doing something wrong or I don't have it anymore. And so I did have a lot of that self doubt. So I started by first using myself as a test case to prove that I could still learn different skills and excel in different areas. And so that's what I did. I started podcasting, and I had been a fan for a really long time, but the closest I had gotten to a mic was karaoke. So it wasn't as if this was something, I was doing all the time. And I said, you know what? I'm going to teach myself how to do this. I'm going to put myself in rooms where there's people much smarter, much more experienced than I am. And I'm going to ask all the dumb questions because I really want to learn. And so that's what I did. And I, flew out to podcasting conferences, and I sat in the front of the room like I was a student again, taking notes, introducing myself to the speakers, the presenters, and saying, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Can I just chat with you about this? And really starting to build up my community in podcasting. And once I did that, I started to really, I call it shooting my shot, which is like a basketball term. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go for all of the opportunities that are available to me. And one of those big ones was a fellowship with NPR. And so NPR has this Next Gen Fellowship, and it's for people that are typically in radio or some sort of broadcast journalism. And this is also people that are, pretty young in their career. But remember, Dawn, as a new podcaster, I'm also young in my career. And I
We're
say that
all
in quotes
young.
because it's my podcasting, but it's also my podcasting career, right? So
Right.
it's not really my entire career. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to apply to this. And I was the first podcaster ever accepted into the program, and I became an NPR fellow. And I remember that very first day, I'm in this room in Seattle where the fellowship was, and everyone has to stand up and introduce themselves. And I hear people say, oh, I'm so and so from the New York Times. I'm so and so from the Associated Press. And it gets to me, and I stand up and say, hi, I'm Monica. I podcast out of my closet. Now, if that's not a
Yes.
crazy, what am I doing here moment, I don't know what is. But I just really, again, use that same philosophy of I'm going to try to learn from everyone here. I'm going to try to put all of the ideas and thoughts and creativity that I can into the story that I was doing for this fellowship. And I think being in that room really solidified for me, yes, you have a place and there is a role for you to start to do other things that are outside of corporate America.
I mean, can we all just take a hot second and acknowledge the bravery it took for you to do that? And I mean, I'm just like I said, your energy is just so beautiful, and I can literally visualize you standing up and saying that just as you described it, and it is so inspiring because I can imagine that what I envision how that played out is not how it felt when you were delivering that, and I think that's so magical, and that you can probably look to that and say that was a huge turning point, and having having the bravery to do that has essentially changed the course of your everyday and your future.
Yes, it really has. And I'm telling you, I was terrified that day in the room to the point that
I
I
bet.
thought maybe they picked the wrong Monica Rivera and there's some
Yeah.
Monica Rivera working for Time Magazine that's supposed to be here instead.
Man,
But
is she
yeah, but it
mad?
was me. Exactly. And everyone was younger than I was, but I just thought you know what, you're here, you're in the room, and let's just, maximize this opportunity as best as we can. And I made great relationships and people I still talk to all these years later. And it was such a rewarding experience.
I absolutely love that. So then from that experience, you obviously stayed on the West Coast for a little while. Is that true?
I was there for a bit and then came back to the East Coast, armed with all the contacts and experience and all that good stuff. And also, NPR has like a really big hub in DC, which is where the organizer was. And so, this particular fellowship just had us in this radio station in Seattle, which was great. But also, those contacts, are still with me now. So, I came back to the East Coast. And then, yeah, I started to ask myself that question of, which I think is such an important question. Where do people see your skills? What are people usually asking you for help? And my whole life, Dawn, for better for worse, again, I've had this knack of just giving advice, sometimes unsolicited, know thyself,
It's the
right?
best
When
advice.
people would come to me and like ask about, starting a business, or I have this idea of wanting to do this side hustle, and it would all just click in my mind. For some reason, it would crystallize, and I would say, I have it. Here's your 28-step map in order to get from A to Z. And people would say, whoa, 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 28 steps. And I'm like, yes, it's easy peasy. And it just wasn't that way for other people. But for me, I think my superpower is figuring out how you can monetize your skills. And I just decided, I'm going to start to run with that a little bit and leverage all my years of marketing experience and all the things that I had wanted to do back in the business to consumer space that I had been doing for business to business. How can I apply this to people here? And so, that's kind of, where I am right now.
I absolutely love that. So if I were to describe, or you were to describe what you do now, so you have this beautiful corporate background that gave you the skills to transition into what you love. You've created this podcast, but you also have the consulting that goes along with that. Do they work in tandem together? How did you develop and plan that?
Yeah, so the podcast is called You Want to Do What? And the reason it's called that is because that's the question I kept sort of coming back to myself when I wanted to go out and do these things. It's like, Monica, you want to do what? You're nuts. And I think oftentimes we ask ourselves that, or our families may ask us, our friends may ask us that question. So I thought it was sort of that perfect question to kind of put into just the ether of, these are all things. It's a universal theme that we have, but we want to kind of do something different. And so really it's about, taking women, and it's traditionally been women that I would say are probably like mid to late 30s and up, that have been working within this corporate structure for a really long time and want to figure out, how can I monetize some other things to do. And I had done that always sort of like as a one-off for people, but it became really crystal clear for me that I wanted to do this, and it was important work to do during the pandemic. And particularly seeing people as they were getting laid off from jobs, and knowing that when you only have one income stream, everything hinges on that one income stream. And that is so incredibly stressful because you're holding on to the thing, hoping that it's holding on to you back. And so if I can help people figure out how to create different ways to get money through side hustles, through, VA work, or, kind of figuring out how can we take those beautiful cupcakes that you sell and kind of put them out and get them to more people's hands. Like those are the types of things that I'm trying to consult on with other women. And then also, leveraging, if you already have something, how's your marketing look? Let's create a strategy for you so it doesn't feel like social media is not a strategy. Social media is a tactic. Strategy is much bigger than that. So let me help you create that for yourself and for your business.
I I love that. I talk a lot about this because I obviously have a very specific set of skills, none of which include marketing. And so I joke that I am a mess, and I've identified that in my own space, and I have a lot of people, really good people around me who help me. Um, but I think that that's one thing that especially women, when they're looking at their career, and they're looking at what they've done, they really minimize the skills they have and what they're good at. And they're like, oh, I'm just, it's really easy. It's like,
Right.
well,
Right.
that's where you want to start, right? That if it's really easy for you, it's probably not really easy for everybody else, and that's where you
Yes.
start, right?
And it's so true. I mean, I think you nailed it perfectly. I had given a workshop recently on personal branding. And I thought, well, everyone must know this. But like the person was very like, please, can you come speak to my organization, speak to my community on this? And so I said, of course, we'll go and do this. And afterwards, the workshop, Dawn, was so well received, and people kept saying, hey, can you take a look at my profile? Do you mind if I schedule some time so you can take a look at the ways that I'm showing up online and the ways that I'm appearing? And it was a beautiful reminder of we're so close to the things that we know that it's so easy for us to assume that everyone else knows it. But it's because we're in our own world. So of course, like I'm reading things related to marketing and business and branding and strategy all the time. So it's so easy for me to also surround myself with people that are talking about that. So it feels as if maybe I don't have, this tremendous value, but I'm also in this echo chamber where we're all sort of speaking to each other about these topics. It's when you step outside of it and you realize how you can help people with the skills that you have, because it's not something that everyone will know about. Like that's when you're really giving value back to people. So you're almost doing yourself and people a disservice by minimizing your skill set, thinking everyone must know it or it's not enough or I need to read 10 more books before I can actually try to help someone else. Like really, there's so much value that all of us can provide others.
Absolutely. And, another thing that has come to light in my world over the last couple of years in all the different business ventures that I find myself in is just because you see yourself one way doesn't mean that the outward world sees you the same way. And that's something that I've really had to wrestle with, for lack of a better word, because I see myself very clearly one way, and then I'll hear something from somewhere, or like I had a girlfriend who's like, "Oh, I'm inspired by you today. My nails are painted this like beautiful red color, just like you." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, is that? Oh, okay.
That's
Like
great.
that's how you see me." And it's so funny because like that's not how I see myself, but that's how my outward, self is perceived. And so I think that's something that you also have to really hone in on is you feel all of your inward insecurities as a business owner and someone in your craft, but that doesn't mean that the outward world sees you the same way.
Absolutely. Like pay attention to those compliments, right? Like even
Yeah.
if it's about the red nails, it could be a comment where you think, oh, that's nothing. But if people are complimenting, I don't know, your style, or they're complimenting your organizational skills, or they're complimenting the way you're able to have conversations with strangers,
Mhm.
all of those things might seem like, oh, they're no big deal. These are things that I always do. It totally makes sense for me. But those are the things that people are telling you without you even asking. Those are your strengths, and those are the other things that I'm sure other people are probably noticing as well. So I know that's a place where people struggle of, oh, but I've done this one career my entire life, I don't have any skills beyond that. We all have other skills beyond that, believe me. I share
Yeah.
this one quick story, if I might. It's an anecdote from an episode of Shark Tank, and this woman had a pitch about how to make laundry easier. And I thought, okay, well, I don't find laundry to be, really difficult, but I'm totally down to hear what this woman has to say. And she talked about when you're washing your bed sheets, that they'll get all tangled up. And Dawn, she had 4 different names for the types of tangles your bed sheets can come in. And she created this little plastic doodad that kept your sheets from knotting up, because she said if you're doing laundry and you have a big family, it's really costing you time to like untangle your sheets. And she walked away with a deal. And
Wow.
this is a woman who did laundry all the time, was like, hey, other people must have this problem. I'm going to try to find a way to solve it. And she created this little plastic round thing that somehow makes the sheet stay in place. And she walked away with a deal. So I'm telling you, it stuck out to me because there's no problem that's too small if you know how to position it well.
Well, and there's always a market. That's what
Right.
I'm finding because my niche is creatives and people who are passionate, and that's a whole entire niche, and it's something that inspires me and really lights my fire. But there's people in my own profession who only deal in doctors and only deal in X, Y, and Z, and
Hmm.
we've all taken the almost exact same educational knowledge And we all have pretty similar public accounting backgrounds or corporate backgrounds. And we've all really made it our own. And I think those people, the ones who've consciously made those decisions, or at least at some point consciously made them,
Hmm.
those are the people who get the most out of what they're doing,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
They're
Hmm.
showing up every day. They're like, I've done that in my business. I'm like, this is what I love about what I do, and these are the things that I don't necessarily love. So how do I maximize my time on these things and fill in somewhere on these other things? And I mean, your story is very similar, right? Like you weren't being filled up at your 9 to 5, and it would have been very easy for you to just say, well, this is my lot in life, and I
Hmm.
can't do anything else, and I'm just going to succumb to this, and this is just my future. And think of all the joy and experiences that you wouldn't have had if you just said, well, this is my life.
Absolutely. It's 100% true. And I tell people that this is the one marker to sort of look out for, if I could offer this advice. You'll start, hopefully when you're in a position, you'll feel happy with the role. And then over time, depending on how that goes, maybe you sort of slide into this area where you feel content. And I think content is okay because it's called work and not fun, right? So I
Right.
kind of get like, content can be an okay place to be.
Yes.
But as it starts to slide away from content to where you're really sort of dreading where you are,
Mhm.
like that's the sign to kind of look out for, because that is really hard to live in that space over a prolonged period of time, because it's not just about the work at that point. It starts to really fester into other aspects of your life, and that unhappiness sort of starts to like kind of creep in. And so that's the part that I always caution people to look out for when you feel like that slip is happening. And it's not just I've had a bad day at work, but when you look back and you feel like, okay, these days actually equals weeks and these weeks equal months, and maybe it's even started to feel like a few years, like you've slipped into a place where it does not feel content anymore. And at that point, I think really evaluate. And it's difficult to say that because I understand I grew up as somebody who lived in the Bronx. We did not have money. We grew up on public assistance. So I'm not saying this from a place of not understanding how difficult and challenging life can be. I'm just simply saying, allowing yourself to look at the problem from a 360-degree perspective allows you so many more options in thinking about what you might want to do next.
Absolutely. And I just love the courage that you've had to have those self-evaluations, because not only are they scary, and making a change that big is scary, and I think you did it in a really mindful way where you kept the stability of your paycheck, but also did some more things to fill your cup. But it's also puts you in a very vulnerable place, because I got to tell you, even in my experience, not everyone's on board when you start going against the waves. You start swimming upstream and people are like, oh, Dawn's lost her mind. And
Yeah.
she, left this really great job with really good benefits, and she was doing really cool stuff. And I mean, I don't know what she's doing now. And so if you have that inner doubt, those things are not helpful. And finding a tribe of people who believe in your happiness at the very least is critical to making sure that your self-doubt doesn't creep in and say, oh, you're right, I shouldn't have left my 9 to 5, because what am I doing? Oh my God, it's so much more than just the people you spend your workday with. Your partner, or your family, or your friends. It's a whole package that you need to really kind of evaluate, and really make sure you're with the right people.
Absolutely. And definitely have that plan. Like there's so many articles nowadays about the great resignation. And as someone I think in my age group, I worry about that a little bit because I think I understand the dissatisfaction. I understand how the world has shifted and we don't want to necessarily go back to the same paradigms of work that we've had in the past. However, I always want to take a poll of these people or read like the next article to say, do people have a plan? What are they doing now? Can I get the follow up on this? Because
Right.
that's the part that scares me. I think it's really important for us to have like a fully fleshed out, as much as possible, plan of what that's going to look like, what that transition is going to be. And maybe it's not a transition at all. Maybe you maintain your 9 to 5, which is great. And you have these other ways to have income, whether that's through investing or real estate or a side hustle, or even starting very slowly how that side hustle transition into a business. Like those are all options. So it doesn't have to be, here's my notice, I'm out of here. Take your laptop, take your ID, I'm done.
Well,
It doesn't have to always be so extreme.
I think that's really important too. I think that the personality for an entrepreneur is maybe not everybody. I know so many people who absolutely love their corporate life, and even just them having the knowledge that it's okay to have something outside of work that fills, that itch you have, or that desire you have for something a little bit extra. That is perfectly okay too. And we're definitely, everybody has their own joy and what brings them joy. And honestly, I know a lot of people who the stability makes them really happy, and it fills their life, and it makes them live the life they want to live. So, that extra spark of joy is critical for their happiness.
Absolutely. During the pandemic, I had some friends that born and raised in Brooklyn, lived in Brooklyn their whole life. I could never imagine them moving. And they moved out to suburbs in Pennsylvania. And so they have this big, beautiful house, lots of great property. And they were both able to keep their jobs here because of the transition of being able to work remotely. And so she works in accounting, as do you,
All
and
cool
he
kids.
works and he works in the healthcare industry and doing on the administrative side. But what they realize is now living in Pennsylvania, where they don't have the same like social life the way that they did in New York, where it's so easy to kind of go out and see a show or a movie and all that. So they had some extra time, and they were both financially well off, but we have this extra time now that we're home after work. And so they decided to just kind of go to Upwork and say, what are some little projects we can do, and just work 3 days a week on these extra little projects, and then they have more income, right? And it's not because they necessarily quote unquote needed it, right? But it also gives them other opportunities. Well, now they can invest more. Now they can put, more money away faster for their daughter. And it was just something that they did. Now it gave them different options. And it also kind of gave them the opportunity to play a little bit. Like, what other things could we do when we have this extra free time? So it doesn't always have to be such a big jump as we talked about, but it could say, hey, I have like 6 hours extra a week. Let's see what else I can do to maybe earn some additional income. And you can start that way too. And it gives you a chance to experiment of, well, I thought I really wanted to do this, but now that I'm doing this, I don't love it. And then that's okay too. And it's a much easier, risk-free way of trying, as opposed to just handing in that resignation tomorrow.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that shifted too with the pandemic is obviously a lot of us are seeing less and less people. So for me, I am an avid gardener. I come from a long history of avid gardeners, and I have been able to utilize my passion and my love for that, not only to get out in the sun and get my redheaded body a little bit of sun, but also being in a area that's so different than where I grew up. I've had to go out and meet people in my community who are into the same thing, because quite frankly, I don't understand or didn't understand how any of the gardening down here worked. And so for me, going out of my comfort zone and saying, I'm really into this, or historically have been really into this, but I don't know how it works here, help me. And really like making that new community has filled that part of my cup, right? And I think that you have a really amazing example of this in your run club. And I want to hear all about this, because honestly, this may be my favorite thing that you do.
No, thank you. Yes, absolutely. So I think community is hugely important. And if anyone sort of doubts that, I would encourage you to just Google the effects of having community. It truly is such an important, integral part of our human experience. And so I found during the pandemic, I said, I've had this love-hate relationship my whole life with running. And so I am going to try to do something about it. And so I told myself 3 times a week, You're going to go out and you're going to run. You're not going to care about the distance. You're not going to care about the time. You're just simply going to say 3 times a week, you're going to show up for yourself and try to do this. And I had been doing that early 2020 and it had been going really well. And then, of course, I get to this point, like the bravado kicks in, where I said, I'm going to go out for a quick run. And it was June of 2020. I remember it was Father's Day. I go out for this quick run that ended up being anything but. And I'm going down this hill and I feel a pop in my calf. And I thought, okay, I just need to stretch it. And then when I tried to put weight on it again, it became very clear that that was not going to happen. And if you've ever seen the movie Usual Suspects, like the main character, Kaiser Soze, has like this limp. I literally had to drag my leg almost behind me to get home because it was Sunday morning at 6:30 in the morning. So no one was really out. And everyone that I called to try to pick me up was sleeping. So no one could come pick me up. And I couldn't take an Uber because it was the pandemic and I didn't have a mask because I was out for a run by myself. No one was out. And I just thought, oh my gosh. And I had to drag my leg about a mile to get back home.
Oh my
And
God.
so it took, several months to like feel good and to be able to run again. And when I was finally able to do it, I realized I don't have endurance anymore. I don't feel as motivated as I did. It was like a really discouraging moment. And so I get this email, and to this day, I don't know why, because I wasn't a member of Meetup prior to this, but I get an email from Meetup saying, start an outdoor adventure community today. And I normally overanalyze everything in my life, Dawn. And for some reason, all my best moves have happened when I've just followed my gut. And so I said, you know what, that's a great idea. So I started a run club called Slow AF Run Club. And I thought, this is great if you're slow, if you want to run and you're in this area, this is where we're going to be. And so I created the logo, created the community, and had the first meetup a few days later on a Sunday because Sunday was like kind of my favorite day to go out and try to run. And so I started on a Sunday, the first meetup. 7 people showed up, including myself and my best friend. The whole time I thought, this is a terrible idea. Let's just go home. And 7 people were there. I had cotton mouth. I felt so nervous, like, oh, what am I doing? And now we have about 1,200 members in less than 2 years. And so, created the community that I wanted and that I hoped for, where we didn't have to talk about time. We're not talking about races. Like, perfect example, New York City area in November, it's the marathon, the New York City Marathon.
Yep.
We had one of our most highly attended meetups on the marathon. Like, that just shows you, like, our group is not running the marathon. I support them if they want to, but that's just not the kind of crew that we are, which is really great because you can just show up exactly as you are and you never have to feel pressure about even running. Some people walk the entire time because they just want the community. And so that was really kind of the biggest thing for me that came out of the pandemic, was now having this like amazing community of people where we do more than just like our 2 mile runs, but we'll do what I call slow AF sit downs, which might be picnics or hikes or movies in the park. We're going to do like a candle making thing. We, rented out a space. We're going to do that next month. And so we have all kinds of different activities that we do to bring people together.
I mean, when I said you're electric and I just want to be around you, like, I mean, that I got nothing. That's just amazing. I wish I lived closer to you, not in the winter.
I wish you did too.
But in the summer. I mean, what a testament to how much people want to be around you and how incredible you are. I mean, the merch must be amazing for that, but also just
it's fun. The merch is fun.
I mean, just an amazing way to bring people together in a way that lets them come as they are.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I think it's really important, especially in this period of now where we hear about, pandemic weight gain and all those things. And we tell people like it's important to be active, but then we have so many communities that are rooted in this competition with each other. How many reps can you do? How fast can you go?
Right.
All of those things, like that doesn't feel good. Like sometimes you just want to move your body and feel like that's enough. And I think you need that place to start and feel welcome. And there's tons of places in the city and in my community where if you want to train for the marathon, I can refer you to those. Those are also great folks. It's just not the group that we are.
Right.
But I think it's just as important to have space for people who don't aspire to run races, for people who are coming back from injuries, from people who are starting the first time, for people who have mobility issues. I think it's just as important to create these inclusive spaces where you can just move your body in a way that you don't feel judged or discouraged anyway. And no one ever is by themselves. No one ever comes last, if you will, like on their own. Like we're always together, and every single person waits until everyone is back. So no one's like, okay, I did my 2 miles, I'm out of here. Every single person waits until we're all back together as a group for us to take the photos, do the high fives, that kind of thing. And that is, I think, what really helps people feel comfortable and refer their friends and kind of keep coming back every week.
I feel like we should try and start these run clubs in other major cities. I know some peeps.
Well, I have the trademark, so I'm waiting for my trademark to come in,
Perfect.
so I'm ready to do it when
Okay.
yeah, when that happens. Yep.
I love it. I think just over, like, if I had to paint with a wide brush, I think it's just incredible how you've really identified your gifts and how you can serve others. Because I mean, the whole theme of today, all I've heard is this is how I can help others, and this is how I can bring community together, and this is how I can do all those things. And I think if you would have just stayed in a job that didn't fill you up, so many people would have missed out on such amazing things. And I think it just is incredible that you identified what filled your cup and then shared your gifts with others to help them do the same thing.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. It took a long time to get to this place, but I'm so glad that I'm here. And I just feel incredibly blessed to be able to work with the people that I do and to create like real value, I hope, in people's lives, because I get it back from them all the time.
I feel the same way in my work. So if somebody listening is like, oh my God, I need you in my life, kind of like I feel every time we chat, how does somebody find you?
Yeah, so just go to the website. It's youwannadowhat.com. So wanna, WANNA, which is, I would say, my one faux pas as a marketer. I should have made it maybe a little more SEO friendly. But again, sometimes you need to just get out there
Get
and try your
excited.
idea. So yeah, so it's youwannadowhat.com. And if you want to reach out to me directly, just send me an email. I'm always happy to chat. It's Monica@youwannadowhat.com to just send me an email. And then, from there you can find socials, all of the same name and all that good stuff. But I love to have, conversations with folks and really get to know people.
And then one last thing, what physical demographic do you have to be in to join your amazing run club?
Any demographic you want to be. Even if you are a fast runner, you can join as long as you like to be with slow people. But if you are in the New York City, northern New Jersey area, we meet every Sunday at 10 o'clock. And so that's what we'll be. And then hopefully, when that trademark application goes in, there will be many more Slow AF run clubs near
Yes.
you.
I
Yes.
volunteer. I ran extra hard this morning knowing we were chatting. Stephanie can vouch to my extra spiciness today. But I think it's incredible. And thank you so much for joining me today. This has been so much fun. And I look forward to many, many more years together and hearing all the amazing stories you have, sharing and honestly how you're growing from here, because I know this isn't the end of your adventures. So thank you again.
Well, I just want to thank you, Dawn, and say how much I appreciate you. And again, as I mentioned with podcasting and putting myself in the rooms with people that know more than me, when I first had questions for you, you were so kind and so generous in your help and us connecting and not making me feel dumb for like the questions that I was asking,
Never.
which is so important to create that space. I just want to thank you for all the great work that you're doing, for having me as a guest, and more importantly, just for helping me in my business in all those ways that are really important, and making sure that I get to stay here and not in jail for doing something wrong on my
We don't go to
taxes.
jail. We don't go to jail
Yes,
here.
exactly.
No,
Exactly.
we don't do that. No, we follow all the rules. And I think part of that's
Exactly.
identifying what the rules are. That's a lot of my role, right? Is helping you know what those rules are. So it's always a pleasure. I feel the same way as you. I think I get as much out of the people that I work with as they get out of me. And It has just been such a pleasure. And for those of you listening, we appreciate you as always. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you enjoy your shows.